Hi, this is John Linneball from John Linneball Tutoring, and this is AP US History Video 11, Geography and Regional Development in British North America, the Atlantic Economy and the Development of Colonial Economies. If you like this video, please hit the thumbs up for a like, please subscribe, please share, and please comment on the video. All of those things will help me a lot. All right, let's get on with the video. Trade, competition over resources, and conflict. In the 17th and 18th centuries, that would be the 1600s and 1700s, conflict increased between rival European empires as well as colonists and Native Americans. Resources were a major bone of contention, particularly land and furs. Land, of course, you could use for agriculture, and furs you could sell. That would, that they'd be turned into hats and coats and things like that. Maybe even fur-lined boots and gloves. All right. The Atlantic economy and the evolution of colonial economies. In the 1700s, increased transatlantic trade, also known as an Atlantic economy, developed. Colonial economies, so that would be in the Americas here, involved selling commodities such as sugar, tobacco, and cotton to Europe, and then Europe would send manufactured goods such as textiles, rum, and manufactured goods to Africa, and Africa would send slaves to the Americas. Through traders, of course. And so colonial economies in the Americas basically sold their commodities in Europe, and to get the commodities in the first place by growing them out of the ground, etc., they needed lots of cheap labor to obtain the commodities. Thus, indentured servants and actual slaves were used, as well as other laborers. So let's move on. Trade networks, English manufacturing, the colonial I'll try that again. The colonial Atlantic economy of this time period is usually called triangle trade. It was developed in the 1700s, roughly the same time as the Industrial Revolution in England, which would make sense, since English manufactured goods such as firearms, shoes, furniture, ceramics, etc. were shipped off to Africa and the Americas to be traded for slaves, commodities, etc. So it would make sense that this all happened at the same time since they all depended on each other. Trade networks, African slaves and American crops. The second part of triangle trade was the sale of African slaves. They were kidnapped or captured, depending on how you want to look at it, usually from interior African tribes by coastal African tribes. And what I mean by captured, perhaps there was a war, so they were prisoners of war, rather than just being straight up kidnapped. Anyway, the unlucky people from the interior African tribes would be sold into slavery by members of the coastal African tribes to white and what have you slave traders who would take them to the Americas. So slave traders traded manufactured goods from Europe, England, etc. for slaves. Slaves took the Middle Passage, basically to the New World, which was basically being crammed into ships' cargo holds. You've probably seen the drawings, etc., of what those slave holds look like. Those were not good. It's not a great way to cruise across the Atlantic Ocean. New World colonies grew food crops that could be exported to Europe, but food crops could also be shipped elsewhere. For example, sugar could be shipped from the West Indies to Europe and New England. New England and England are both bad places to grow sugar plants such as sugarcane, so sugar that comes from a tropical environment such as the West Indies would be in great demand, and they could use those for different things that we all use sugar for today. Tobacco, indigo, sugar, rice, and slavery in the South and in the West Indies. So here's some dried tobacco leaf. You can also see my video number 9, Geography and Regional Development in British North America, the Lower South, and the Colonies of the British West Indies. The Virginia colonies were, of course, a tobacco economy. They had large fields of tobacco that they had to grow, and they had to move their tobacco fields every so often because the soil would wear out quickly, and, of course, needed large quantities of labor, so that's where slaves and indentured servants came in. The Lower South, Carolina and Georgia colonies exported rice and indigo. By 1750, rice and indigo were 2/3 of the exports from these colonies. And the West Indies, of course, were the most profitable because they were sugar economies, they had huge sugar plantations, and just like the Virginia colonies in the Lower South, they had to rely on slaves to make that even more profitable and easy to do. And all colonies required a large, cheap labor pool, so slavery thrived in these colonies. Fur trade in North America. The fur trade attracted Dutch, French, and English traders. You can see video 5, different methods of colonization. Most of the fur trade took place in the area north of the Ohio River, ranging to the St. Lawrence River and Great Lakes. European fur traders bargained and cooperated with Native Americans, as opposed to the agricultural settlers on the East Coast who drove natives out of that area. And that's because there just weren't that many Dutch and French traders in these areas, and it just worked better. So, as you can see by watching video 5, the French and the Dutch often intermarried with Native Americans and were participated in ceremonies and peaceful negotiations rather than just battle. However, the fur trade gave natives incentive to expand the territory, leading to intertribal wars. So even if there weren't as many conflicts or armed conflicts with the Dutch and the French because of their methods, kind of was balanced out because the natives fought against each other. The native tribes wanted to expand their territories and wanted to expand their control over the fur-bearing animals such as beavers that lived in those territories because they wanted to trade the furs with the Dutch and the French and the English. And so that caused intertribal wars, and of course those wars were also supported by competing European powers who were more than happy to arm these people with firearms, etc. Okay. Wheat, indentured servitude, and redemptioners in the middle colonies. By the 18th century, the 1700s, German and Scotch-Irish immigrants had learned to farm wheat and other cereal grains for export to Europe. Unlike the southern colonies, which relied on slaves, the middle colonies relied on indentured servants who agreed to work for a term to pay for their passage to the New World, and they also relied on redemptioners, who were a little bit different from indentured servants. Redemptioners were like indentured servants, but unlike the indentured servants who paid their passage up front and negotiated their terms up front, so how long they would have to work before they were freed, the redemptioners agreed to either borrow money from friends and family in the New World or to negotiate the repayment once they got there. The distinct disadvantage of this method is that the redemptioners would get to the New World, let's say New York Harbor or Philadelphia or somewhere like that, and they'd be stuck on that ship until someone would agree to pay for their passage. And of course, that would be at disadvantageous terms. Sorry, had a little trouble getting that word out of my mouth. Basically, the person who is ready, willing, and able to pay your passage might say, well, I'm not so willing unless you agree to work for me instead of, for 7 years, let's say 14 years, because, I'm taking a risk with you. However, even redemptioners tended to do well in Pennsylvania once they paid off their debts. The standard of living in Pennsylvania was the highest in the world compared to comparable agricultural regions of that time, of the 1700s. So go Pennsylvania, go. New England fish and lumber. New England farmland wasn't good for growing export crops, so fishing and timber harvesting were the main sources of income in New England. Salted fish made up 1/3 of the exports from New England. Timber and livestock made up another third. Towns became cities. New England grew as the economy grew. Rum was distilled in New England from British West Indies sugar. That would be triangular trade, remember that. That was another New England product. French molasses was also used, despite high taxes on it from the Molasses Act. Mostly it was just smuggled in violation of the act, since the taxes, of course, were prohibitively high because the British Empire did not want the colonies to use sugar sources that didn't come from other British colonies. New England was the most British of the colony groups. It was very, very English, British, and it also grew the slowest, mostly just from natural reproduction, and many of the colonists in the New England region actually left New England in the 18th century because the farmland wasn't good, the weather's not that great compared to other parts of the British American colonies, etc. So New England was the most British, but it was not the fastest growing. And actually, if you think about it, that's pretty similar. I mean, Great Britain's an island kind of where there's a lot of fishing and the weather isn't that great, etc. So little coincidence there. Did you find this video useful? Well, please like it and subscribe to my channel. Neither action costs you anything. You'll be alerted about my new videos. Why do I care? It's simple. YouTube doesn't let me share any ad revenue unless I have 1,000 subscribers and 4,000 hours. That's 240,000 minutes of view time in a year. While many of the people are watching these, I still don't have 4,000 hours of watch time. And I don't have 1,000 subscribers at this time, although I'm getting pretty close. For the same reasons, you're not only welcome but encouraged to share links to this video, put it in playlists, etc. You can cut it up and use clips from it. Just credit me and preferably have a link to my channel. I'm always happy to read and respond to constructive criticism or suggestions for new videos. And I reserve the right to delete comments from and block those who specialize in destructive criticism. Your basic trolls or things that are off topic, spammers, disturb people, what have you. You can hire me for tutoring. I'm always happy to help with SAT prep, ACT prep, AP US history like this. And thanks for watching. If you want my contact information, keep watching. Facebook. I'm on facebook.com/Linneball Tutoring. My last name and tutoring all combined into one word. Instagram. Instagram.com/John.Linneball.tutoring. My phone number is 415-623-4251. And that is a cell phone, so you can even text me if you like. My email is john@johnlinneball.com. My website is www.johnlinneball.com or www.johnlinneballtutoring.com. They both take you to the same website. Testpreparation.locals.com, that's my locals.com site. I've got a lot of these videos put up on there. And I will put some exclusive content up there. I know I keep saying that. I promise I will put some up. And if you want to mail me, John Linneball Tutoring, 1859 Powell Street, number 109, San Francisco, California, 94133. Finally, note, this is not a substitute for your classes, text, etc. This video is based on the Barron's AP US History Review Book, 4th edition, any other sources listed in the video description, and my general knowledge of US history. While this should help you do well on the AP US History exam, I can't be responsible for what your teacher thinks is important and asks you about in his or her own tests, homework, etc. Please read your class texts and pay attention to what your teacher says in class. All right, hope you have a good day. Bye-bye.